Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Maritimers are cleaning up after Fiona slams into Atlantic Canada, leaving behind a trail of massive destruction and a number of power outages. The federal government announced that it is sending in the military to help with the cleanup efforts in a number of our Atlantic provinces. And this is the start of Truth and Reconciliation Week in Canada. A special flag raising ceremony honoring the special event took place at Lethbridge City Hall.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Hurricane Fiona has left hundreds of people homeless in Nova Scotia. On Sunday, residents of Cape Breton were beginning repairs and surveying the damage as politicians touched down to evaluate the devastation from the storm.
He had a big tree drop in his property, leaned over on his neighbor's step there. So us and family and friends here cutting it down. Glace Bay and Reserve look like a war zone. I've never seen anything like it before.
You know, lost a section of the roof and some siding on one side of the house. So, you know, could have been worse. Could have lost half the roof, or could have lost the whole thing, I guess.
We're not sure of the damage yet until we get the trees off the roof. So it's a wait and see. We're just waiting for the wood fellas to arrive on Monday to take the trees off the roof. So that's going to be. We don't know how much damage is done here.
So we have two medium to long-term shelters set up right now. We are also in the talks, in conversations with the Salvation Army. They're going to be bringing in community food trucks. So right now I'm hearing from a lot of people that, you know what, my supplies are getting low. We're kind of creeping up to that 72-hour mark. What are we going to do? Because we know most of our stores here, they don't have power. We don't have access to replenishing any of those supplies. So over 200 people have been displaced from their housing. So we're not talking about small numbers of people. And unfortunately, as this progresses, we're going to see that number increase.
Meanwhile, in Prince Edward Island, the historic Stanley Bridge in PEI was destroyed by Fiona over the weekend. 5 cottages in a neighboring area were also lifted by the wind and deposited on the other side of the pond.
Completely destroyed, which is the saddest part of everything. All the buildings are ruined. All our docks are destroyed. People's livelihoods are up the river. There was a lot of water, and of course it all goes up the river. And then the river got so high, and when the tide changes, it all had to come back down again. Quite upset, actually, because I've lived here my whole life. You know, we didn't own any. We owned only one building on that wharf now, but before it was my entire life there. That's so sad. It's very sad for us who lived here all of our lives, and our parents who lived here and who built that, and, you know, it's our life is going to change now around our harbor and our marina and our fishing community and our fishermen. You know, they've lost a lot.
Alan Linkletter says a tree planted by his parents 51 years ago in PEI came down over the weekend thanks to Hurricane Fiona. He says he was thankful, however, that the Norway maple did not come crashing down onto his house.
It just pulled the roots right out. We actually saw it going down. It was swaying back and forth, and then all of a sudden it just, so there was a bird in it actually this morning. When it was up against the window, there was a robin in the tree, still in the tree, and he's been around there all afternoon, so it was a very sad moment. Well, we're thankful it went down the way it did. It just went along the side of the front of the house. It didn't crash into the house, which could have made it a lot worse, so.
The federal government is promising to deploy troops and other assistance to Atlantic Canada where needed in the aftermath of Hurricane Fiona.
And after several intense days of preparation and response, we are now moving from a posture of response to one of recovery. We all know that this recovery will take time, and there are significant challenges, but I want to take this opportunity to assure all Canadians that the federal government is coordinated across all departments, agencies, and ministries, and we are united in our resolve to be there for the people and communities that have been impacted and to work in close collaboration with our provincial and municipal partners. Yesterday, the Prime Minister announced that we have approved a request for federal assistance for the government of Nova Scotia. Reconnaissance operations have been taking place, and Minister Anand will have more to share on this work. Prince Edward Island continues to experience effects such as localized coastal flooding, downed trees and disruption to roadways, impacts to critical infrastructure, and over half of the population is still without power.
Incredible devastation. Meanwhile, here in southwestern Alberta, it felt a lot like summer again today. Angela Stewart is on location at Henderson Lake Park with an early peek at the forecast. Angela, how long can we expect those warm temperatures to last here in Lethbridge?
Yeah, Hal, it will feel like summer for a few days this week. Today we hit the mid-20s, and Tuesday we may get fairly close to 30 degrees, so don't put those fans or portable air conditioners away just yet. As for how the rest of the week is shaping up, I'll have all those details coming up later in the show.
Thanks so much, Angela. The Trudeau government says all COVID-19 border restrictions will be removed as of Saturday, including mandatory vaccination, testing, and quarantine of international travelers. Also, there will be no longer a requirement to wear a mask on planes or trains. But Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos says the pandemic restrictions could be reinstated if they are needed.
The Government of Canada will maintain the ability to re-establish certain border measures should they be required in the future to protect Canadians from the importation of new variants of concern or other emerging public health threats.
Duclos adds the changes by the federal government also means that foreign nationals will no longer require an approved series of vaccinations to enter the country. Political reporter Brian Lilly says CPC leader Pierre Poilievre is taking credit for having the Liberals lift many of the border restrictions. Brian joins us now from Toronto. So, Brian, was it the pressure from Poilievre and the Tories the main reason why we won't have to undergo health checks for travel on air and rail?
I don't think it's the only reason, but I think it's a factor. And if I were Pierre Poilievre, I'd be running around doing victory laps, pumping my fist in the air going, yeah, we did this. Of course, he should be trying to take credit for it. It's politics, and he's a politician. But it is a factor. No doubt it's a factor in my mind. But there were a lot of other things going on. There was a lot of pressure from inside the Liberal caucus. At the Liberal cabinet table, there was a lot of pressure to drop this as well. In fact, I think I'm the only one that's been reporting that Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos wanted to keep all these measures in place. And when he couldn't get that, he wanted to keep masking in place until after Thanksgiving. He lost at cabinet because the Liberal cabinet said, no, we can't do this anymore. The public wants it gone.
Thanks, Brian. Brian Lilly will also discuss a new threat that Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's family's received and how he's involving the RCMP. He'll have details coming up later in our broadcast. All charges have been dropped against 4 men who were allegedly involved in COVID-19 protests in June last year in Ontario. The Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedom says the Crown dropped the charges against former MPP Randy Hillier, former MP Derek Sloan, Pastor Heinrich Hildebrand, and a private citizen by the name of Dan Stasko. The Justice Centre said the Crown stated that prosecution was no longer in the public interest. Ontario implemented lockdowns at the beginning of the pandemic, and in June of last year, the 4 men were charged for participating in a peaceful demonstration in Norfolk, Ontario. There were between 200 and 300 people at the outdoor demonstration protesting the government's COVID-19 measures. Truth and Reconciliation Week kicked off here in Lethbridge this morning, where the Métis and Reconciliation flags were raised outside of City Hall. Many took part in the flag raising, including Blackfoot elder Mike Bruised-Head. Bruised-Head says he would like to see the idea of reconciliation happen all the time and not just for 1 week.
You don't have to be reminded every year that, hey, this Reconciliation Week, that you do your own reconciliation every day, wherever you work, wherever you live, wherever you communicate. And that's what I'm saying. It's got to be embedded in the conscience of people to go out, get along with people. They don't need a reminder, but I think I'll be around for a while till everybody understands. Reconciliation, it's here to stay. It's not going to go away. And we're going to keep reminding people, hey, be part of it.
The city will observe September 30th as the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and all city facilities will be closed as a result. Alberta Justice Minister Tyler Shandro blasted the federal government's firearms ban. Shandro calls the move by the Trudeau Liberals an overreach which unfairly targets law-abiding gun owners. He said that these were all firearms that were acquired legally, and his government will not work with Ottawa to help confiscate around 30,000 guns.
The list of over 1,500 banned models were all previously non-restricted or restricted firearms and include hunting rifles and shotguns, as well as historical artifacts almost 100 years old. And while the federal government has labeled them as, in their words, assault style, end quote, that's a label designed to scare Canadians who are unfamiliar with firearms. It's a description based purely on their appearance and not on any unusual danger that they pose or mechanical capability that they possess. Indeed, these guns are not materially different from any number of semi-automatic rifles and shotguns that continue to be legal for any qualified Albertan to own. This is politically motivated confiscation, pure and simple. One that will do nothing to make Alberta a safer place or to reduce the criminal misuse of firearms. And so I responded to Minister Mendicino by telling him that no, Alberta will not assist the federal government in this or any federal effort to strip lawfully obtained personal property from our residents.
Lethbridge West NDP MLA Shannon Phillips, along with NDP critic for advanced education David Eggen, shared their thoughts on how the Alberta government can better support young people who choose to study and work here in the province. Phillips says a good strategy to get post-secondary students to not only come to Lethbridge to study, but to work here post-graduation is to establish a Future Leaders Council.
There is no question that our economy needs young people to graduate out of this institution, out of the college, and stay here to build the kind of economy that we want to see. That is why we need a council to make sure that that voice is being heard, not just from Edmonton, not just from Calgary, but the tremendous amount of integration that already exists between our post-secondary institutions and the broader community down here in the south, and how we can build on our strengths going forward.
MLA Phillips says a Future Leaders Council would give students an opportunity to be part of the conversations when it comes to talks about post-secondary education. Last week, we brought you the story of the rising popularity of Indian horse relays. Now, over the weekend, spectators, including Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, watched the races here in Lethbridge. BCN's Naveen Day was also in attendance. It says Kenney was also honored with a Blackfoot name.
Just past these gates is where many southern Albertans go to try their luck at winning big money on which horse they hope will win at the track. But this past weekend, the Rocky Mountain Turf Club was home to a sacred sport that is one of the oldest in North America. Indian horse relays are an adrenaline rush both for the players and the spectators. The sport, which is hundreds of years old, has recently risen in popularity across Alberta. Allison Redcrow, owner of the team Old Sun from the Siksika First Nation, says he formed the team because of how fun the sport is. He adds the surge in popularity came from young people taking an interest in the game.
This is our sport, and it's, I hope it always remains among us because we got it going. And we've been doing this, believe it or not, for probably 200-300 years. But now it's really gained popularity because of the amount of young people that are getting involved with it, participating in it. So, it brings a lot of people, family together, and, it's just a great sport to be involved with.
It means a lot because you're riding for a team. It just means a lot to me.
Without horses, I'll probably be out there doing bad stuff, drinking, doing drugs. But with these horses, I wouldn't know where I'd be without these horses.
Sunday's races wrapped up with the Jason Goodstriker Memorial Warrior Championship Indian Relay Race. Named after a well-respected leader, announcer, educator, and athlete who passed away in 2020. He was also a longtime friend of Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, who appointed him to Alberta's Fair Deal panel. Kenney visited Lethbridge on Sunday to watch the competition and honor his friend. Goodstriker's father, prominent elder Wilton Goodstriker of the Kainai First Nation, gave the Premier a special honor, the Blackfoot name Matsomita, which means brave horse.
I had a ceremonial horse that was with me for 36, 37 years, grew to be quite old, not afraid of anything, go through anything, take on any kind of challenge that we presented him with. And Premier Kenney, I suppose, reminds me of the kind of courage that my ceremonial horse had.
Well, it's an incredible honor to receive that from the blood tribe of the Blackfoot Confederacy, and Wilton Goodstriker is one of the most respected elders. I've worked really closely with First Nations as Premier and before that, and I'm just so glad to see things moving in a good way. We see so much, we focus a lot on the tragedies in the past, which we should, but we should also focus on a lot of the great things that are happening with First Nations here in southern Alberta with the Blackfoot people.
With no saddle or helmet, many Indigenous say the Indian Relay is North America's original extreme sport. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Fans of professional bull riding in Lethbridge got their fill of excitement over the weekend. PBR Canada rolled into town for their Canada Cup Series. 84 players competed to stay on the bull for 8 seconds. It was Calgary's Nick Tetz who won the Lethbridge event, but Claresholm native Logan Beaver remains #1 in the standings. He says the key to staying on the bull is to simply dance with it.
All the bulls, they're different. They all have different personalities. Some are gentle, some are, like they got personalities just like us. There's some that are mean, that they know the game, they love the game just as much. Doesn't matter what their personality is, and you got to approach each bull the same no matter what. And there's a lot of nerves that you're going to be feeling yourself, and you kind of got to block those out. And yeah, it's a dance at the end of the day. You're not just trying to hang on. You're trying to move with the bull and stay with them for 8 seconds, and yeah, make everything work.
That's an 800-pound dancing partner. Wow. The University of Lethbridge Alumni Association named its new president on Monday. Deirdre McKenna assumed the role. McKenna is the daughter of former Dillon School of Business professor Dr. Ian McKenna, who passed away in 2017. Her family moved to Lethbridge from the United Kingdom when she was just 13 years of age. McKenna is a U of L graduate and has served as director of the ULAA for the past year. The Canadian military is warning of a recruiting shortfall. They say a lack of new recruits threatens to exacerbate a pre-existing shortage of personnel in the Canadian Armed Forces.
So we're selling the benefits of being in the Canadian Armed Forces. We're looking at the pension, the medical, the dental, the education piece, continuing education, as well as a pretty interesting career where you get to travel around the world potentially and get paid to do it. We're still keeping the virtual presence that we had during the pandemic, and now we're moving back into more face-to-face events in schools and job fairs. It was stressful both on us and on the applicants. Just operating in the COVID persistent environment was very difficult. We sort of adapted and overcome, and we're looking at changing and making things more efficient moving forward.
You know, even though we're in the second week of fall, it hasn't really felt anything like it here in southwestern Alberta. It's felt a lot more like summer, hasn't it? The heat will be sticking around for some time. Complete weather details are coming up. You know, the average high for this time of year in Lethbridge is only about 18 degrees or so. We were well above that again today. Angela Stewart is on location out at Henderson Lake Park with a full look at the weather forecast. Angela, how long should we expect those hot temperatures to continue for southwestern Alberta?
Well, how the summer-like conditions should remain for the next couple of days, as we may even hit 30 degrees by the middle of the week. Tonight, however, it will be partly cloudy with a low near 9 degrees. Tuesday, just a few clouds expected with a high near 29 degrees. Lots of sunshine on tap for Wednesday with a high of 31. A low pressure system returns on Thursday, bringing clouds and the mercury dropping to 21 degrees. Even cooler under an overcast sky on Friday with a high of only 18. A high pressure system returns in time for the weekend, clearing out those clouds. We should get up to about 26 degrees on Saturday. Slightly cooler with a high near 22 for Sunday. The average high for this time of year is 18 degrees with an average low of 3 degrees. The record high was 31, set back in 1943 with the record low -4 in 1965. The sun rose at 7:23 and set at 7:22. Looking at the national forecast for Tuesday now, it should be mainly sunny and 20 degrees in Victoria, mainly sunny and 21 for Vancouver. Just a few clouds and 27 is on tap for Calgary for Tuesday. There's also a mix of sun and cloud and 28 degrees expected for Edmonton, sunshine and 23 for Regina. Cloudy and 25 for Saskatoon. Expect lots of sunshine, but only a high of 15 in Winnipeg for Tuesday. To the central part of the country now, showers and 17 for Toronto, rain and 18 degrees in our nation's capital for Ottawa. There's a good chance of a thunderstorm and a high of only 16 in Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, which is still recovering from Hurricane Fiona, clouds mixed with sunshine and 21 for Fredericton. Showers, even drizzle, and a high of 18 for Halifax. Rain and 20 degrees in Charlottetown. And to St. John's, expect showers with a high of 20 degrees on Tuesday. And Hal, that's a look at the forecast.
The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development says Russia's war in Ukraine and the lingering effects of the pandemic are dragging down global economic growth more than anticipated. The Paris-based group says growth will be modest 3% this year before slowing to 2.2% next year. That represents around $2.8 trillion US in lost global output for 2023. It says the war in Ukraine pushed up food and energy prices worldwide. It expects inflation to gradually ease in most G20 countries, including Canada, to around 6.6%. That is still far above many central banks' targets of just 2%. The British pound fell to an all-time low against the American Greenback earlier today. This follows the UK government pledging tax cuts that have fueled concerns about its economic policy. The pound fell to as low as $1.03 US before rallying to $1.07. The British currency has lost more than 5% against the US dollar since last Friday. It follows the government's biggest tax cuts in 50 years amid plans to spend billions to help consumers and businesses struggling with high energy bills. The combination sparked investor concern about spiraling government debt. Amazon says it is holding a second Prime Day-like shopping event next month. The company is the latest to offer holiday deals earlier this year to entice consumers dealing with tighter budgets. The event will be held October the 11th and 12th, offering early access to discounted items to Prime members. It signals a recognition from Amazon that it needs to provide more deals to cash-strapped consumers in what is expected to be a challenging Christmas shopping season for retailers. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 153 points on the day to finish at 18,327. The Dow was down 329 points to 29,260. The S&P 500 was down 38 points to 3655. And the Nasdaq was down 65 on the day to 10,802. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 242 to 76.32 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 9 cents to 6.92 US. Gold was up 20 cents to 16.2257 US an ounce, and silver was even at 18.35 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.83 per bushel, barley's at $8.97, canola's at $18.73, and corn is at $12.19 per bushel. Live cattle were down 78 cents to 143.48. Feeder cattle were down $1.28 to 177.08, and lean hogs were down $2.25 to $90.38. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 72.78 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the final remnants of Canada's COVID-19 restrictions at the border will be lifted on Saturday. That includes the end of mandatory vaccination, random testing, quarantine, the use of the ArriveCan app, and masks on planes and trains. People who already began their quarantine or testing regime in the 14 days leading up to October 1st will not have to continue once the changes come into effect. A serious threat has been made against CPC leader Pierre Poilievre's wife, Anna. The RCMP have been called in to deal with the threat. Political reporter Brian Lilly will have details for us shortly. And listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar. The Lethbridge Senior Citizens Organization is looking for volunteers to take part in their Drive Happiness program. This program is to help seniors in our community who are facing extreme loneliness due to lack of accessible transportation. Volunteers drive clients to their medical appointments, pick up groceries, and take them to important life activities. If you're interested in this opportunity and for more information, visit lethseniors.com/volunteer drivers. Lethbridge Legal Guidance is a nonprofit society offering free legal advice to low-income Southern Albertans. It holds clinics on Tuesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. by appointment only. Some of the areas the society assists in include family, criminal, traffic, immigration, EI, and other issues. For more information, call 403-380-6338 or visit their website, lethbridgelegalguidance.ca. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The federal government says the remaining COVID-19 related travel measures will be done away with as of this Saturday. Now that includes the fact that travelers will no longer need to undergo health checks for travel on air and rail or have to wear masks on planes and trains. To talk about this in a little more detail is political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, joining us once again from Toronto. Brian, that's good news for many Canadians.
Oh, absolutely. And especially just before the snowbirds start heading south. If you're flying down, you won't have to wear a mask, though if you want to, because of your own personal medical choices, you can. You won't have to use ArriveCan when you come back into the country, although if you want to use it as your customs declaration, you can. You won't have to upload all of your vaccination records and all of that. But it's interesting. Somebody pointed out to me there used to be an e-declaration app for the Canada Border Services Agency, and they, as this story was coming out last week, they said, look, on the App Store it says this expires September 30th. ArriveCan, now optional, and takes over that function on October 1st. So yeah, all of these things falling by the wayside as of October 1st. So, if you're looking at coming back at 11:59 on September 30th or just after midnight on October 1st, you know what to do. Also doing away with quarantine and isolation requirements, the mandatory random testing, all of it being dropped. The government saying, look, in the age of Omicron, it doesn't make sense anymore. But how? We can get into this more if you want. I think that they're dropping it now instead of earlier, because of their political science as opposed to any medical science.
We talk about the snowbirds, but also, hey, Thanksgiving just around the corner, so really good timing for people who want to do more traveling, especially with family in the United States. Now, as much as many welcome this announcement, you have said it is coming much later than it should have, Brian. What makes you say that?
I say that because this should have been done away with months ago. I mean, it was scheduled to expire on June 30th, just ahead of Canada Day. They extended it. Now, everything but the masking requirements, by the way, is pretty much just, it was part of an order in council. That's an order from the cabinet that's set to expire September 30th. They should have let this lapse in June, if not earlier, and done away with it ahead of our busy summer travel season. Instead, what's it been like for border towns? Across this country, there are towns big and small that rely on cross-border traffic for a lot of economic activity. Even here in Toronto, and we're about a 2-hour drive, we get a lot of people coming up as tourists from the United States. They want to check out a Blue Jays game. I remember being in Ottawa. You'd run into people in Costco. Why? Because there was no Costco in the part of Western New York just south of Ottawa. So people would drive an hour up to do that. They've been missing out on that cross-border shopping, the cross-border tourism. We've lost out on conventions, be it in cities big or small across the country, because people have said, all these extra requirements, our members don't want to do that. So they should have done away with this a long time ago. The science didn't back it up, but it was kept in place for that political science, that idea that the Trudeau government felt they had they got a boost politically from keeping this in place. And look, for people who are concerned and say, well, I'm immunocompromised, or I have a loved one who is, well, you can still wear a mask. And judging by, someone that uses public transit quite a bit here in Toronto, I'm on the subway all the time. It's the easiest way to get around. Masking's been optional there for months. Good number of people still use it. Most don't, but a good number do because of their own personal choice. That's what we're getting back to when it comes to international travel and inside the country travel. I think that's a good thing.
Now, Brian, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre put out a video recently taking credit for this, dropping the restrictions, putting the pressure on the feds. Do you think his position on this and his leadership win is why the Trudeau Liberals finally acted?
I don't think it's the only reason, but I think it's a factor. And if I were Pierre Poilievre, I'd be running around doing victory laps, pumping my fist in the air, going, yeah, we did this. Of course, he should be trying to take credit for it. It's politics, and he's a politician. But it is a factor. No doubt it's a factor in my mind. But there were a lot of other things going on. There was a lot of pressure from inside the Liberal caucus. At the Liberal cabinet table, there was a lot of pressure to drop this as well. In fact, I think I'm the only one that's been reporting that Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos wanted to keep all these measures in place. And when he couldn't get that, he wanted to keep masking in place until after Thanksgiving. He lost at cabinet because the Liberal cabinet said, no, we can't do this anymore. The public wants it gone. And then the third and final major factor, I think, in this are the lawsuits that are going on. There's one lawsuit that was before the courts last week, a Vancouver man and a Toronto man who are challenging the vaccination requirements that were dropped for domestic flights. And, I expected that they might have made this announcement before that case was in court, with the government trying to have it thrown out last Wednesday. So I'm surprised they waited this long, but as I said, it was a fighting cabinet. So those are the three factors: pressure inside the Liberal caucus, court cases, and Pierre Poilievre, absolutely a factor.
Now, Brian, we had a chance to hear Pierre Poilievre as leader in the House of Commons last week when QP resumed question period. He even sparred with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau a little bit. What are your thoughts on Pierre Poilievre's main issues right now? And who do you think won the first of many rounds?
Well, the first 2 days, Pierre Poilievre was squaring off against the Liberal front bench. The Prime Minister wasn't there. And really, it's not overly fair to the Liberal front bench to be going up against them, because Poilievre is very good in question period and in the House of Commons. Chrystia Freeland answering questions on the fact that the Liberals are going to be raising payroll taxes and they're going to hike the carbon tax in the middle of an affordability crisis really wasn't fair, because she sounds out of touch. She sounds completely off base on this. When it came to Thursday, the Prime Minister was back in the country. Of course, he'd gone to the Queen's funeral last Monday. Then he'd gone to the United Nations for 2 days. Then he was in. First day, I'm going to say it was a draw. Some viewers may hate to hear this, but Justin Trudeau, when he's on, can be very good and effective in question period. He does well at it. So does Pierre Poilievre. And so it was interesting to see them go up against each other. Could you say either one won last Thursday? Nope, they each got out the points they needed for their respective audiences, and they're not the same audiences. But long term, I think that this issue that Poilievre is going on, that the government is going to make your life less affordable in the middle of affordability crisis, that they're going to increase 2 payroll taxes, EI premiums and CPP premiums on January 1st, that the carbon tax is going to go up on April 1st, hammering that message home again and again, that the government is going to make things more expensive, that this long term will resonate. And I don't think the general population will like it. So if he can break through with that message, I think it's a winning message long term for him, even if last Thursday was pretty much a draw.
Do you think we could potentially see a fall election?
Look, it's minority parliament, so it's always a possibility. And I've been saying for some time that the Liberals are looking, and if they think the winning conditions are there for them, then yeah, they'll do it. If there is a fall election, then I've long said that it would be sometime in November. Those are the dates they're looking at, because you've got Quebec is about to have their provincial election in about a week or so. Just over a week and a half from now. And then Ontario has their municipal elections, every municipality in the province. Right. These things take up a lot of resources. You don't want to be competing for volunteers. So they'd go sometime after that, if they go at all. Could be put off to the spring. But hey, when you're in government, your goal is to govern as long as possible, unless you see an opportunity to try and take that next step, get a majority again. They're definitely not in the majority territory, but do they think they could beat up Poilievre? At this point, it's not looking like they feel like that. The polls are kind of in a weird spot. Last week, there was one saying an 8-point lead for Poilievre. That's Main Street. not one of my go-to pollsters, but Leger had a 6-point lead, and their previous poll in early August, had given a 5-point lead for the Liberals. So it went from a 5-point lead for the Liberals to a 6-point lead for the Conservatives. That's still minority territory, but if I were Trudeau, I wouldn't be looking to go at this point.
So, Brian, prior to Pierre Poilievre winning the CPC leadership race, there was some controversy over a photo of him shaking hands with a man named Jeremy Mackenzie, a man that some describe as a racist and a white supremacist. At the time, Pierre Poilievre said he didn't know the guy. Now, apparently, Pierre Poilievre has issued another statement following comments that Mackenzie allegedly made about Poilievre's family. What was allegedly said?
I haven't watched the podcast at this point, but the reports I've read from my colleagues at National Post, the statement from Pierre Poilievre himself indicates that it was threats of physical and sexual violence against his wife, Anna. And he went on to say that this has been passed on to the RCMP. My understanding is that Mackenzie made some very lewd and threatening comments during a podcast, and that another man on the podcast with him laughed. Remember, Mackenzie he calls himself the founder of Diagolon. Now, depending on who you listen to, this is either an internet joke or an attempt to form a whites-only territory stretching diagonally from Alaska to Florida. They're weird dudes, however you want to describe them. They are weird dudes, and he's got some pretty awful views that he's put out there. When he took the photo with Poilievre, he knew what he was doing. He was trying to get him in trouble. He's a Maxime Bernier PPC supporter, and he posted a video afterwards saying that he did this to get Pierre Poilievre in trouble. Now he's in trouble for things he's saying. As Poilievre said, nobody should have to put up with these sorts of statements, these kind of comments, these kind of threats. Go after his policies, go after him, but don't make threats against his family. I think that's something everyone can get behind.
Now, Brian, this comes after Tory MP Garnet Jennis asked for the security credentials of a journalist who has often covered Parliament Hill to be revoked. Was there a threat?
According to Jennis, yeah, there was a threat. What happened was last week in the House of Commons, Jennis had a bit of fun by putting his follow-up question to Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland in the form of Bohemian Rhapsody, the Queen song that Justin Trudeau famously sung 2 nights before the Queen's funeral. That was in the story. Jennis used some of the words and phrases from that, tried to do a bit of the cadence, said, the Prime Minister's not a poor boy from a poor family, but he's got to show some sympathy. I thought it was clever. A lot of people thought it was funny. You get these things now and again with some characters in the House of Commons, and they've been on all sides. We've had poems and songs and different things. It livens things up. It's a bit of levity. Well, this freelance journalist named Dale Smith, he goes by Journo Dale on Twitter, very much in the Liberal camp. He's forever going after both the NDP and the Conservatives for not, just going with whatever Justin Trudeau wants. He made a comment on social media saying that this was lame, really lame. And you know what you do with a horse when it's this lame? You take it out back and you shoot it. Now, it's not a direct quote. I don't have the tweet in front of me, but it's words to that effect. Jenna said, look, I don't feel comfortable having this guy get through security because he's got a security credentials and a pass to cover Parliament. I don't feel comfortable with him if he's going around saying those sorts of things. Is it a threat? We could have a discussion about that. I can tell you that if I had said that about a Liberal MP, Hal, every single media outlet would be denouncing me, calling for the Sun to fire me. But because Dale Smith is, a very much on the Liberal side, a lot of people are giving him a pass. The Parliamentary Press Gallery, to their credit, did distance themselves from this and say that this is not acceptable. So good on the gallery for that. The Conservatives also made clear they don't want his press credentials revoked because that gets you a lot of things. They just said, we don't want him in West Block where the House of Commons meets these days. We don't want him sitting in the gallery behind us while we're in the middle of question period. Look, at the least, Dale Smith should have apologized. He should have said I was wrong. Instead, he doubled down and he had some people, some notable people, back him up and say it was all okay. It's not okay to be saying things like that.
Sometimes I guess you can take a joke a little too far. Brian, the Conservatives let it be known over the weekend that they will vote in favor of the Liberal measures aimed at helping low-income Canadians deal with inflation. So why are they doing this, considering they've been so critical of the federal government's spending habits?
Andrew Scheer, who's taken on a leadership role in Poilievre's team, gave an interview where he said, look, this is a big part of the measure is giving people a rebate on the GST. And anytime that you can give people back some of their tax money, that's a good thing. So there's a lot of politics at play in here. I don't think that they believe that it's sound economic policy, but the government's going to do it anyway. But they want to make sure they're not on the record voting against giving people back a tax rebate or voting against helping the least fortunate. My comment on the government's affordability measures that they announced last week are that if you're at the bottom of the economic scale, you don't care that this may end up hurting in the long term, that this may contribute to inflation. And a lot of economists have said that. I happen to think that there's a good chance of that. You're just thinking, great, I'm getting some immediate relief. The bad part is that in 6 months, the government's going to withdraw these measures, and they may have made inflation worse by giving people who will spend the money as fast as they can more money in their pockets, money that they definitely need, but it'll be short term. It'll be there for 6 months, then it's gone, and inflation hasn't improved. If the government were doing this and doing something to help on their side bring down the inflationary pressures, I might be a bit more supportive of these ideas. But I can see why the Conservatives are voting for it, because otherwise it would just be, you voted against helping the least fortunate, you voted against the tax rebate. That's not something that they want on their record. And as I said, it's going to pass regardless.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.
The COVID-19 pandemic really shook many components of our daily lives. Everything from politics to civil rights to spending time in the park was really affected by it. Some even say that our faith in the Canadian healthcare system has also been damaged. Even before the pandemic, many were saying that Western medicine of Alberta Health is a broken system. But what are the alternatives? Are there really any? Today we're joined by Cami Tanner of Urban Apothecary here in Lethbridge, who maybe has some answers to some of these questions. Cami, welcome to Bridge City News.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Now, Cami, you have a vision of natural health that may be a little bit different from what we're accustomed to here in Canada. Can you explain what that vision really is?
Yeah, we have opened up a shop that brings in a lot of natural products to help heal the body. Things like herbs and mushrooms that are grown in nature that work to really heal different problems within the body.
I'm even looking behind you there. You've got a few different, maybe some licorice and some, what else have you got behind you there?
We've got some mugwort, we've got chamomile, we have a whole range of different herbs. It almost seems like a little Harry Potter in here, but it's fun.
Now, do you believe that there's a natural remedy for many human ailments or diseases?
Absolutely. There's a number of things that are grown naturally that work to heal the body. We always look at, our body was grown and created from the elements of the earth, and so are the plants. And they work in harmony with each other.
Now, can you really explain how you got into this aspect of health?
Absolutely. I've always been a big believer in growing things yourself, growing your own garden, because not only is it more nutritious for you, it tastes better and it's healthier than things that you're buying from even just the grocery store. And so we have worked to study more and more about plants, starting from that basic level of growing our own garden and healthy eating that way, to the whole medicinal aspect of plants and how they work with the body.
So do you think more Canadians nowadays, Cami, are actually growing their own food and having bigger gardens, especially during the pandemic?
Absolutely, especially since the pandemic. And now with grocery store prices rising, we find even more and more people are wanting to grow their own food, be more self-sufficient, and know exactly how their food is grown and where it's coming from.
So from your experience, which vegetables do you think have some of the highest nutrients and some of the best vitamins to help us in our daily health routines?
Ooh, that's a big question because so many different plants have so many different constituents that grow. But some of my favorites are things that we call adaptogens. So they go into the body and they don't just heal one thing, but they adapt to the body of different problems. So if you're having memory loss, let's go help heal that. If you're having high blood pressure, cholesterol, some of those would include mucuna, ashwagandha, lucuma, different herbs like that.
So how about for memory loss then? What would you recommend?
We do lion's mane mushroom. That is one of the highest level of helping heal the brain. There are studies that have actually been done on lion's mane mushroom with people with Alzheimer's, dementia, and actually reversing those symptoms, even Parkinson's.
Wow. Now, would your ideas toward health be more aligned with traditional Eastern medicine? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. They are the masters at mushrooms and herbs for healing the body because they believe that it's not just a physical healing, but a spiritual healing as well. Everything works harmoniously with each other. Western medicine seems to be more pharmaceutical based.
You know what's interesting though? I love mushrooms myself, and I can't get enough of them, especially on pizzas and my salads. You know, really does portobello mushrooms. I love them. But many of my family can't stand mushrooms. They're always picking them off all the time, and they want to get rid of them. So, are there any alternatives as opposed to the mushrooms for those in my family who really can't stand being a fun guy or a fun girl with these mushrooms?
There are different alternatives both in herb and then the form that you take them. So we get a lot of people that come in here that cannot stand mushrooms either. But if you're doing it in a tincture form, which is just a dropper full of an extraction of the mushroom, it's much easier to take, and then you're not dealing with texture issues either.
Are all mushrooms created equally, or do some have better components when it comes to helping us heal?
All mushrooms are very healing, but mushrooms have different healing properties and aspects to it. Like I said, lion's mane is for the brain. Reishi mushroom is really good for helping with stress and anxiety and also for liver support function. So there are hundreds of varieties of mushrooms. They all do their own special thing and unique thing to the body.
So Cammie, do you personally feel that our current healthcare system may be a little broken or missing some very important elements?
Yeah, absolutely. You look at anywhere else where the medical schools are teaching in the world, and they really do a 50-50 education basis of both pharmaceutical and plant healing, where in Western medication, it's 100% pharmaceutical based. And so, you know, we really are missing out on some beautiful healing aspects that are so much more beneficial to the body than what we're normally used to in Western medical society.
Why do you think it is a lot of times the naturopaths don't get the recognition or respect they deserve?
I think we've just, and not to say there's anything wrong with, you know, medical system. Well, let's just say there's a lot of people that think that naturopaths are just hocus pocus and that they've just put blind faith in the medical system in pharmaceuticals and not really doing their background and education for themselves on how those really affect the body and how they really heal or treat.
How about some vegetables that may help with during the COVID-19 pandemic and help to maybe not necessarily heal, but maybe help offset some of the symptoms people suffering from severe viruses?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of plants out there that are antiseptic that help support the immune system. Like shiitake mushrooms are really great for helping with immunity. And there are things that we can take both to increase our adrenal system, our immunity, and symptoms of having contracted the COVID-19 virus, as well as other psychological problems with depression and things like that that come from isolation during the pandemic.
And a lot of these products are safe for all age demographics, not necessarily just middle-aged people like myself, but maybe seniors and children as well?
We always recommend that with children, I mean, smaller doses always, but we always like to ask people to go to their naturopaths and get their advice, especially when it comes to children, because we never know how, with the growing bodies, how they may react to it. So we always like to just get the naturopath's recommendations when it comes to that, but always smaller doses for sure.
I have a lot of friends and family as well that suffer from insomnia, sleep deprivation. Is there anything that can really help them naturally in that regard?
Absolutely. We have a lot of those things. Like I said, reishi mushroom is really, really great, as well as ashwagandha. Anytime people come into the store and they say, oh, I have this problem or I have this problem, we always go, oh, we've got a mushroom for that. And there truly is a mushroom for just about every problem that the body can go through.
Now, do you feel that there is a way for families to be healthier and happier through natural ways outside of Western medical philosophy? Let's look at the big picture here, Cami.
I mean, one of the easiest things is growing a garden. Start growing your own food naturally. You're growing it and eating it right off the vine, straight out of the garden, so you're not dealing with respiration process or travel time from growing it in different areas and having it transported. You're getting the maximum amount of nutrients. Plus, going out and getting some sunshine and vitamin D is one of the healthiest things you can do. And those are simple things.
Yeah, the vitamin D and a little bit of exercise, which is good for the heart as well, right? Taking your dog for a walk, going for a bit of a run, or just a walk around the neighborhood, right? Something very simple like that can make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Now, can you talk a bit about the doctrine of signature? What is it exactly?
Yeah, that is looking at different plants that replicate different parts of the body and healing that part of the body. So a lot of things that we also like to look and utilize is even flower essences. So you look at echinacea, for example, it looks like a shield. So when you're taking echinacea, that shields the body. It protects the body.
That's interesting. Now, would you recommend having raw vegetables as opposed to cooking them? Or sometimes is it more beneficial to cook the vegetables to release maybe some of the oxidants, some of the healing properties within the vegetable itself?
There are some things like tomatoes where they are more beneficial when they're cooked, but for the most part, you should be eating almost a 50% raw diet. Your body works better with raw vegetables than it does cooked vegetables, because when you're eating cooked food, it actually changes the molecular structure of the plant, and your body starts to look at that as an invader of the body. And so it'll actually increase the immune system and the white blood count cell to go and attack that food. And so when it's eat in a raw form, it's a more natural form. The way that your body is more natural, so it will utilize it more beneficial.
Now, Cami, let's dig a little bit deeper into plants for health. The Bible talks about the balm of Gilead. Can you talk about where this plant actually comes from and how beneficial it is?
Those are actually the pods from like the balsam poplar tree and a black cottonwood tree. And it's the sticky resin that comes off of those pods that is turned into a balm or a salve used for healing. The Gilead comes from the actual location of where that originated from. But it helps with anything from healing aspect to inflammation to pain.
Also, people suffering from arthritis as well, or maybe have an injury, something is swollen with the joint. May that help in that regard too?
Absolutely, yes.
Now, here in Southern Alberta, agriculture is a key industry. Are there growers in Southern Alberta who supply what you and Tony use when helping other people?
There are. I mean, you can look at a lot of like the herb aspect. Peppermint, mint, basil. There's a lot of herb growers here that you can utilize, and that we utilize to use for some of the things that we make.
Now, with the hot Southern Alberta summer on the way, are there herbs or plants that can really help people beat the heat?
Anything is in the mint family is probably your best bet, an easiest way to utilize for cooling us down. So peppermint tea, for example, making an iced tea out of peppermint will help cool you down, but it will also help you perspirate. So another healing aspect. So anything in the mint family, peppermint, catnip, even chamomile are great things to go for in the summer to cool you down.
Now, there's certain fruits or vegetables we should maybe steer clear of when it comes to maybe potential healing medicinal properties that we think, you know, oh, this is very beneficial, when in fact it might be more harmful?
There are herbs that you should be careful using if you don't know what you're doing, especially in large amounts. For example, pennypurse is an herb that can cause abortion. So, I mean, people used to take those in the old days. And so that's one thing that you really, really want to be careful for. There's some are herbs that can become poisonous if not utilized in the right way.
And maybe some poisonous mushrooms out there as well that we need to steer clear of, right?
Yes. And the thing is, if you don't know what you're looking for, you can take the wrong one and be in a lot of trouble. So it's very important to really identify and know what you're looking for and be 100% sure before you ingest anything.
Okay, Cam, you seem to be a big supporter of mushrooms. Do you find that more people are not only growing their gardens outside, but maybe growing mushrooms inside or maybe somewhere else in their homes?
You can grow mushrooms in your garden. There's great videos and things that you can watch to buy your own mycelium to grow your own mushroom gardens. We also do grow kits in the store where you can take a grow kit home and you just open up the package and spray it every day, and you'll start fruiting your own mushrooms in your house. And those have been really popular as of lately.
Cami Tanner is with Urban Apothecary here in Lethbridge. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.